I had asked, Kevin and I had met some time ago, and we began to talk about Transport for Christ for this year, and I actually sent him on a task. I said, tell me what we can do where we could see 100 more people come to know Christ in one calendar year for Transport for Christ. That was the kind of the mission I sent him on. And so the things that we're going to be sponsoring this year, my hope, and I want you to pray with me if you're a part of Journey, is that at the end of the year, when we hear back from Transport for next year, that they've had 100 more because we got involved in a higher level. How many of you will just agree to do that with me? That you'll pray along those lines with me? Are you going to do that? How many of you would think that would be actually really cool if we could do that? Here's an interesting thing. In Africa, and I've known this from other places, not just for Transport for Christ, about $150 Canadian, $160 Canadian equals one person coming to know Jesus. Isn't that incredible? And so that's the opportunity that's in front of us. I want you to begin to think about that, and come on out tonight. We're going to share a little bit more about what we hope to see happen in Africa with Transport for Christ in the coming years. We're going to begin a series. You're thinking, my goodness, if he starts preaching now, we're going to be here at, 1 o'clock. We're not. I knew this was coming. We intentionally made this a little bit longer. So we're going to be starting a new series, and we're just going to kind of give a start off of this new series we're going to do. I need you to help me, though, because I'm going to try this. This is a little bit of a challenge. I'm not sure this is going to work because I didn't grow up in Canada, as many of you know, and so I'm not sure if the same sayings I grew up with are ones that you know. So I'm going to start a saying, and you're going to see if you know the rest of it, all right? So as soon as you think you know the rest of it, you just fill in the details, okay? Fill in the rest of the statement. Are you ready? Are you awake? All right, here we go. All right. That's as easy as... Oh! See, that was just one more kind of thing for the pig roast tonight, pie auction. There we go. Perfect. You knew that one. Now I feel like I belong. How about this one? Money doesn't... Oh, apparently we had the same sayings. All right? Well, we're going to keep going. Ready? Try this one. Close the door. Were you raised or born in a barn? My mom said born in a barn, but I've heard raised in a barn too. Very good. How about this one? When I was your age, I had to... Exactly. I had to walk up hills both ways to school, or I had to walk through the snow. Fill in the blank, right? How many of you have ever said that to your kids? I have. All right. Here's the one my dad used to use in that very what I knew was going to become an uncomfortable moment just real soon. Have you ever heard this one? This is going to... I remember as a kid going, I don't think you have a very good memory, Dad. I don't think you remember what this feels like because I think I'm the one that's hurting and you're the one that's got a smile on your face. I'm not sure what's going on here, Dad. How about this one? This was my mom's, all right? She usually said it about Rick and I because my older brother and I, we had a tendency, if you got two little boys and everywhere they go they destroy things, welcome to my mom's life. But my mom also said this about me. Because of the two, I was the most likely one to be involved in this. She said this, you are like a bull in a china shop. Of course, what she meant by that is no matter where I went, I was wrecking stuff, right? I was a one-boy wrecking crew. Now, I have a question for you. Is that actually a true statement? A bull in a china shop. Here we go.
Was a bull in a china shop.
You've heard this expression your whole life, bull in a china shop. It means a really clumsy person breaking things. Did it hurt the bull?
I'm okay.
We set up this kind of rickety shelved china shop, complete with all these dishes, in this bullpen.
This one looks like it's ready to go without the bull.
And we let one bull in. For us, it was just a laugh.
Oh, dang! Here comes the bull. Oh, look, he's totally avoiding all the china.
It was the most graceful thing I'd ever seen. And it was running fast. It wasn't just walking. I mean, it was moving quick, just weaving in and out of these shelves, not even touching it.
Whoa, he's getting right through the shelves without knocking over a single piece.
That was cool. Okay, that's strange. Let's let 2 bulls in. So the 2 bulls, one follows the other one, and they just go around the china shop.
Look at that. They're very careful of breaking china.
I was elated when I found out that the bulls weren't going to break anything because it was just so counterintuitive. I mean, they're big, giant, lumbering beasts. But no, they're ballet dancers. They're the ballet dancers of the wild.
I think we're gonna have to just admit it. It's a stupid saying. I'm never gonna use it again. Bull in a china shop busted.
Busted.
Yeah, it's busted.
All right. So that raises a couple questions for me because I would imagine that all of you have heard that statement and had an image in your mind of what that would look like if you let a bull loose in china shop. And so it raises a question. I wonder how many other things that we believe, that we hold on to be true, maybe even are commonly believed to be true, but they're not. And that's going to lead us into this series that we're calling Foolproof, Living Wisely in a Foolish World. It assumes a couple things. This whole series assumes a couple things. It assumes, first of all, that we can live wisely. In other words, that's actually an option available to us should we choose to do that or follow what we need to do. It also then holds the idea that some of the beliefs and ideas that we do hold are actually foolish. At least some of the ones that are commonly believed. So that's where we're going to go over the next, this is kind of our summer series. And we're going to begin this by today just an introduction into the idea of the wisdom literature in the Bible. There's actually a whole section, if you kind of divide the Old Testament up. The Jews did this. There was a whole section really called the writings. And part of the writings, most of the writings, was actually this thing called wisdom literature. And that includes the book of Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. This whole set of writings, and the whole point of this set of books was to figure out how to live life well, how to live it wisely. And that's what we're going to focus on for the entire summer. Here's some of the topics that we're going to go through kind of in order so that you'll kind of know what's coming up. And here's where we're going. First one's going to be grounded on God's Word. We're going to talk about friendships and marriage. We're going to talk about parenting, wisdom in our finances, wisdom in our use of time, wisdom in our productivity at work, and ultimately the last one, wisdom in the life of indulgence. And you say to yourself, man, that's like a smorgasbord of topics. It's just all over the map. Welcome to the book of Proverbs, because that's exactly what the book of Proverbs is. Once you get past chapter 10, the last 20 chapters, that's what it is. It's just kind of random sayings of wisdom. And there's these little snippets, just kind of like one after another, some just all over the map. And what we're going to try to do is tie all that together into some kind of cohesive sense in these topics. But today what we want to try to do is tie the theme all together. What does it mean to live a wise life or be caught up in wisdom? What does that look like? So let's look at a passage. Matter of fact, a very important passage. I want to encourage you going forward through the summer, if you could learn this passage of Scripture and memorize it, be a great start for you in the search for wisdom. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. Why don't you read along with me? We'll read kind of slow. Here we go. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. Some talk of that last part sometimes, and He will direct your way or direct your path, is how that sometimes is translated. But that kind of gives us where we're going to start. This is kind of the main verse. And at the very end of this, it kind of mentions two things. It mentions the way and the path. And I want to just kind of throw out that when you're interpreting that, you're thinking, what he means by the way, does that mean like my actions? And actually what the way is, actually, it's kind of a word for the journey or the road. It's a synonym for path. It's interesting that the word path and the word way are used over 100 times in the 30 chapters of the book of Proverbs. Because what the book is doing, it's taking this idea of living a wise life, and it's really bringing it down to something that they would have understood all the time. Walking. Walking everywhere you go. Once again, got to walk uphill both ways to go to school. Get back home. And this is how the book of Proverbs describes your life. You are on a journey. You are walking somewhere. And it only gives you two options. There's two different paths, and it's raising the question, which path are you on right now? One path is described by these words. If you read all the way through the book, you'll hear these. It's the path of justice or uprightness, the path of life or righteousness. It is the path of peace, and it always talks about it is the path that is straight. The other path, the one not traveled by the wise, is described this way. It is the path of the wicked. It is the path to death. It is the path of the departed. It is the path to those who are going to Sheol, or what we would use the word kind of hell. It is always described as a crooked path. This is the path of the unwise. The Bible uses several terms for them, and one of the terms it uses is the term fool. A fool in the book of Proverbs is not a funny person. The fool is the person who doesn't learn the lesson of life and continues to go down the painful, crooked, unwise path. They just don't know how to live life well. They're also sometimes described as the sluggard. Probably not a word you've heard in a while. Yeah, sluggard, right? It's what we would describe, the lazy person, the person who doesn't want to work, the person who can't think beyond the moment. That's the sluggard. Sometimes there's another person described in the book of Proverbs. They're called the naive. They're the persons who's not really, they're at the point of deciding which path they're going to go down, but they don't know which one to choose. They're stuck. And they lean towards the unwise path. They're easily drawn down that path. This leads us to another passage in the book of Proverbs, 15 verse 19. It describes in these terms the two paths. The way of the sluggard is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a level highway. When I first came to Canada, I was working one day in this kind of brushy, woodsy area, and I had one of the most unpleasant experiences of my life. I bent down to reach for something, and when I did, I think it's what do they call them, hawthorns? Is that right? The demon bush? And when I leaned down, my hamstring or back, I compressed, and I drove one of those right into my calf muscle, about that far. I want you to know, I never want to do that again. I could go the rest of my life, never experience that, and I would be good. And this is what the Bible's trying to get to in this passage. That people are going down this path. It's like a guy hacking his way through the jungle. He's in pain, but he continues on that path. The other path is this kind of highway. It's this beautiful straight road that is leveled. It is easy. It is easy to get to the end where you want to go. And the Bible is describing these two paths along those terms. One is the path of thorns, and one is the level highway. Yesterday, towards the end of the day, I got a call from a gentleman I've spoken with on a couple of occasions. And I'm going to be honest with you, it was probably the most exhausting phone conversation I have had in several years. In just 10 minutes, as he was telling me his story, I was just beat down of what this guy was going through. It was one problem after another. If all of it was true, which I want to believe it was all true, I want to ask, how do you get to such a spot where you are hacking through life so painfully as this guy was going? As he's telling me this because he thinks the more he tells me, the more likely I will have pity on him and give him. The reality is, the more he told me, the more I goes, there is no help for you. And I don't mean that harshly. I did actually give him something that he wanted, but deep down within, I'm going, it's not going to matter. Because you are so deep in this path, whacking away, a minute gift is only going to end your suffering for a millisecond. See, because in his mind, and I think in many of our minds, we believe we get down this path and it's only going to take one small decision. I'll flip a switch and I will move from a foolish life to a wise life. It's just going to be one decision. All I need is this thing, and then flip. I will start making all these wonderful decisions. Let's ask the question, is that how life really works? Is that how we do it? Is that how human beings are? And the answer is, no, it's not. Life is a volume of just small, little independent, stepping in the right direction, making a step back, taking another step in the right direction, taking another step in the right direction, and ultimately ending up at where we want to be. Proverbs 16, verse 25 says this. This is another great one to memorize. There is a way. Understand what way means now. There's a road, there's this path. There's this path that seems right to man, but its end is the way of death. There is a way, there's this path, there's this direction in life that seems right to a man, but its end is a way to death. In life, we have these moments where we believe we know the next step and the right thing to do. We believe truths. We believe sometimes it's common truth of our life, our culture, that we go, that's what I've got to do next. That's the right next step. And we begin to hold on to that, and all of a sudden, we get down this path and we find ourselves surrounded by thorns, hacking through life, and we ask ourselves, how did we get here? It's kind of like believing that bulls in a china shop are going to destroy everything. It's not true. Once again, this week I had another person, matter of fact, it was last Sunday, I had another person, we're having a conversation, and they asked me a question, what did I believe about something? I began to share it, and this person got really unhappy really quick about my answer. And it took me a few minutes to boil down what it was, but I boiled down to it because her view of life was this. Decisions are made based on this one simple truth. Whatever makes people see, you knew what it was. See, that's a commonly held belief in our world today, isn't it? Whatever makes people happy. It's okay as long as everyone's happy. It's a common held belief. Most people, when you say it out loud, everybody goes, yeah, that makes sense. Does it make sense? It's an interesting question. This came about 1800s, the first of 1800s. This was part of what's called utilitarianism. A guy by the name of Jeremy Bentham really supported this idea. He was a philosopher. He understood the problem of this idea. And so he understood that the reality of trying to choose what would make people happy is a little more complicated than when we throw that out there. When we're facing a kid coming to us, hey, Mommy, I want a candy bar. You have to make a decision. If you're living by what makes kids happy, what are you just choosing? Well, what's going to make him happy right now? What's going to make him happy 15 minutes from now? What's going to do when that sugar kicks into his body and he's kicking and screaming, strapped in a car seat? Is he going to be happy then? What's going to happen when he irritates Mom and Mom loses it? Is he going to get happy then? See, Jeremy Bentham understood this principle that there was a problem, so he created this thing called the hedonic calculus, or pleasure mathematics. And so, here's what he said you had to do to make that actually work. These are the things that you had to bring to bear upon the decision: the intensity, how strong is the pleasure, duration, how long will the pleasure last, the certainty or uncertainty, how likely or unlikely is it the pleasure will actually occur, the propinquity, how soon will the pleasure occur, fecundity, the probability that the action will be followed by the sensations of the same kind, purity, the probability that no, it will not be followed by sensations of the opposite kind, extent, how many people will be affected. So anytime you make a decision, that's what you're supposed to bring into your mind, calculate the number, and then make your decision based upon that. How many of you have the time to do that? When your child asks you for a candy bar, just a minute, let me get my slide rule out. I got some math to do. Now, I know we're laughing at that, but that's the reason why you could actually say happy. You knew the answer because Bentham influenced a lot of people, and they believe that. It almost sounds right. As long as people are happy, they'll end up in the soft, easy, pleasurable road. Is it true? Well, in the next few weeks, I think we're going to find out that it's probably not true. Here's the other thing that he didn't come up with, but other people began to go, wait a minute, there's another problem called the hedonic paradox, which is this: the impulse towards pleasure can be self-defeating. Matter of fact, it's often self-defeating, because when I experience the pleasure, when I go back to experience it again, it has a little less pleasure, so I have to experience more to get the same pleasure. Trust me, if the Leafs win the Stanley Cup this coming year, that will be the greatest pleasure you will ever see in your lifetime for them winning. If they win the next year, it will be down a notch. If they win the following year, down a notch. And if they win the year after that, down a notch and down a notch. If you are a fan of some team that has been winning and winning and winning, you just kind of go, oh, we kind of expect that now. We're kind of angry if you don't win. You can apply that principle to anything: drugs, alcohol, pornography, anything. Why? Because there is a principle that God placed in this universe that when you seek pleasure for its own sake, it begins to evaporate. And people who say, hey, I just make decisions based on what makes people happy, have never really thought that through. Here's a couple other truths expressed in the book of Proverbs about wisdom. Hold on, ready? We're going to do this really quickly. First of all, you are not born with wisdom. You knew that, right? You have children? Are they born with wisdom? No, you spend your entire life trying to teach them. Don't touch that. That's nasty. Do not eat that off the floor at the Galaxy Theater. That is gross, right? Next, you do not automatically become wise as you grow older. See, that's an assumption, right? I'm getting older, I'm learning. No, not necessarily. There are people in their 50s who are still hacking through the forest of thorn bushes because they've never gotten on the right path of wisdom. They're still making the same mistakes they made in high school or before. Third, we all have a bent towards foolish, lazy behavior. I want you to actually admit that that is true. You may not be lazy, but if you're not, that is because someone bent you away from it. I remind you of my dad and the conversation I had about him earlier in this moment. He bent me away from that. I'll just put it that way. We have this tendency to fall on the path of the fool. We have to work to get on the path of the wise. The fourth truth is this: we need to learn to restrain our natural desires which take us down the wrong path. That is going to be the point of this entire series. Lord, what do I need to pull back? How do I get on the right path of life in any area? It's going to cover a lot of different areas. Here's where we're going to wrap up today. Back to our main verse that we looked at the very beginning. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your path. I want you to grab a hold of this thought. Do not lean on your own understanding. In other words, that common belief that's been passed down to you by your parents, by our society, or what you just kind of figured out going through life. The Bible is teaching us, do not trust that. Why? because we have a tendency to lean to the wrong side of the road. That's our tendency. This is actually the biggest hurdle to getting on the effective life that we want. It's actually go, wait a minute, I cannot trust what is naturally, what I view to be right. I actually have to trust who? What does it say? Trust in the Lord. That actually gives definition of what this particular passage means when it says trust in the Lord. It's actually saying trust in the Lord to help you know what is the wise path. You get to a decision, what am I supposed to do? Trust in the Lord. What does God have to say about parenting, money, relationships, sexuality, work, productivity, rest? What does the Lord have to say about all that? Well, I think I'm going to do it this way. Okay, hack through the woods some more. Trust in the Lord. See, the reality is we get comfortable in our beliefs even though we're going down a path of pain. If you're in a path of pain, you should at least ask the question, God, is this a trial of my faith? Or am I leading myself in this and I don't have to be here and I could get out of it? That's a good question to ask. It's kind of like the guy who's lost and they're on vacation and everybody in the vehicle knows he's lost, but he's refusing to admit he's lost. Anybody ever driven with this guy? He refuses to admit he's lost and he goes, this must be the right way. And everybody's in the van's going, why must it be the right way? Because you chose it? Because I think we're in a different country now than we started in. I don't think we were meant to do that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. In all your ways acknowledge Him. Think about this. Those two phrases, trust in the Lord with all your heart, in all your ways acknowledge Him, are actually saying very similar things. In all your way, in this path, in your choice of life, as you're moving down the road of life and you're making decisions, acknowledge Him. God, what do I do in this moment? What's the right thing? I'm going to trust in you right now. Not what I've been told, not what I've thought, not what I think is the right thing, but I'm going to trust in you. Every area of life, from parenting to how much I eat, to when I work, and when I rest. Lord, I want to trust in what you have to say to me. If you acknowledge His truth, He will put you on the right path. And you will begin a life of living wisely in a crazy, foolish world. One last passage, Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. For the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. That kind of sounds kind of strange, and the worship team is going to come. They're going to kind of lead us in one song as we kind of pray at the end here today. The fear of the Lord is this kind of ultimate reverence for God. Healthy respect. I get in this moment of decision. Which path am I going to choose? This is the way that seems right to me. The fear of the Lord is going, but I don't know very much. I get it wrong sometimes. So I'm going to trust in the Lord is actually the fear of the Lord. It's this healthy reverence for who God is and what He knows about life. Answer the simple question, who knows how to live life wisely? You, me, or God? Which one is it? Well, He's the one that created everything and put everything in order. And even if we're not quite sure of that, He is actually the one that put the foundation of how things work together. Take you back to the idea of pleasure. He's the one that made us so that the paradox of pleasure is deeply rooted in us as human beings. So that we would not seek pleasure for pleasure's sake alone. That would be a byproduct of good living and wise living, that we would get to experience the pleasure that He has designed for us as human beings. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. This morning I want to encourage you to just be confronted by God. They're going to lead us in this song, and I want to encourage you to pray. And at the very beginning of this sermon series, make this simple commitment. God, I actually want to go down the path of wisdom in all of these areas with you. And when I get to these moments where I'm going to have to make a decision, well, this is the way I want to do it, but I see this is the way you want it done. God, I want the fear of the Lord to connect with me. And I go, God, I'm going to reverence your way in your will. This is where we start with a relationship with God, even in wise living. God, how do I live with you? The Bible describes that first step as the beginning of wisdom. Let's take that step together.